people from the NRA, the management of the NRA. Even within the rules, you can have influence, you can have pressure, and that's difficult to put into rules. But it has something to see also with the personal values of the people who are working for the NRA as a regulator in the aim of respect, transparency, accountability, and responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Koen. Congratulations to the Craig and to the court, to the Constitutional Court, because I think it was a bravery from your side and also from the Constitutional Court. Johan, what?
Yeah. Yeah, hi. My name is Johan Ruppe. I'm from the Swedish regulator. I am vice chair of the Electricity Working Group and co-chairing nowadays something that's called the Compliance and Enforcement Task Force at the CEER as well. But that's not what I'm going to talk about now. I was about to have an impulse to utilize one of your slides there, Koen, but I skipped that, perhaps. I think the first time we talked about this independence was indirectly back in 2009. We were to certify the Swedish TSO, and we were second after Denmark coming to the Commission. And Denmark, even though it's very close to Sweden, we are not similar legislation-wise. So Denmark had ring-fenced its finance minister and its energy minister. And then Sweden came and said, yeah, we have it in our constitution that no minister can interfere with the daily operation of any authority. Because the Swedish TSO is state-controlled and literally just maintaining the grid for the Swedish kingdom, to be really formal. So that was a steep slope to go up against. We were referred to, but aren't you like in France? No, we are just like our government is just like the Commission. It meets every Thursday, all the ministers, and they take the decisions collectively. Of course, the Commission staff then went even more afraid of what the outcome would be, and then we had to explain this with our constitution, and it's been there for some 300-400 years now. Now, my case is a bit different from Koen's. It stems actually from the Swedish network companies. When I started at the authority my first year, I started litigating against all 175 plus network companies claiming that they overcharged the customers. We stayed in court, first instance, administrative court for 5 years without a decision. And during those 5 years, the whole debate was, of course, as always, money. And in this case, it was, what was the rate of return of capital? So, when I entered this sector, I came from competition law, from merger, and for me, the first strange thing I heard from the network company, there's so much competition. And my first reaction was, but you have a legal monopoly. Where's the competition? Well, this end consumers, they're starting to buy heat pumps now. So they consume less. That was the competition. But So this was very cumbersome in the beginning. We tried to look all over the world to see if there was any listed network companies on exchanges. I think we managed finally to find one in Australia and maybe one in New Zealand. The closest to Europe was E.ON, but it's the whole concern, so it's not the network company. So we had no comparison, and we thought we were more than strict when we said, okay, we look at the real estate sector, properties. And of course, they got the rate of return based on that, and they were still not happy, took us to court. Now I will speed up the timeline, and then 5 years ago, still arguing the same topics, losing in court every time because they managed to always have X plus professors claiming that the rate of return should be much higher, of course, than the authority claims, with one poor professor trying to defend it. So they took us to court because we, after 20 years plus going to court all the time, I think my colleagues in the tariff department were rather tired of it. So they thought, okay, we write to the government and ask them to make a decree how the weighted average cost of capital should be calculated, but we give the input. So they more or less just submitted a draft to the government. The government changed the heading and issued it. And now they thought, okay, now there will be any more court cases. Then the sector took the authority to court and said they are violating the EU legislation. They're not independent. They have given a decree here from the government exactly all the components that should build up this rate of return of the capital. And they won.
They should have won.
They won. It took them 2 instances. They won. They won in the appeal court, administrative appeal court, for our geographical jurisdiction. And for the court, it was rather interesting because they had been given a good indication by the ECJ from the German case, as we call it in Sweden, Tysklandsdomen. So the German court had made a referral to ECJ and asking, and of course they responded as they did. And the Swedish Administrative Appeal Court referred to the case of ECJ and said, you have to apply the EU legislation. You should not apply the Swedish Electricity Act at all. You should go straight on the EU legislation. So there we are now. And of course, it remains to be seen if there probably will always be appeals. But I think now we are trying to be proactive. And I think I said it to someone during lunch that we spell out the components that we think should be in the tariffs. And we send this message over and over in so many channels as we can. So hopefully it will be established among all. And then when it's applied, unfortunately, the next period for us is 28 to 32. But it will be launched in January 27. So the network companies, because they have to submit their revenue cap proposals in 27, so they can we can approve them or not before 28. So that's a twist in this, because at the same time, I think I'm not sure the network companies have realized what the judgment really means, because I think we have a proverb in Swedish, and it's probably in other languages: don't ask for more than you can bite. And I think they did, because I don't think they have realized the implication if we were to fully fledged only go on EU legislation. So it will be very interesting going forward. But that's my Swedish example with the German touch.
Thank you very much, Johan. I think before lunch, I think Erwin was listing sort of best practices and bad practices, and we said regulators should not seek nor accept guidance. Here, actually, you were seeking guidance from so. Okay, and I think when it comes to tariff, I think any decision would be appealed anyway, because everybody is trying to get more or less depending on which side you see. I think it's rare that there is I was serving in the Italian regulator in the late 90s, and we were, at the moment, it was still vertically integrated, so we were defining tariff for the final consumers, and we updated them every 3 months, and every 3 months there was an appeal, and sometimes they didn't even change the number of the decision, they just copy-pasted without changing, updating the number of the decision. So they were just doing it for the sake that an administrative court might decide in their favor. So don't expect this not to happen. I think we have two interesting cases sort of brought to us by Koen and by Johan. Any question, comment on these cases? Katarina.
Yes, I have a question.
I think the question, because I don't know whether the colleagues online, was whether these judgments, the one that we heard for Belgium and for Sweden, had an impact beyond the individual cases in making the NRA stronger. Koen, do you want to?
First of all, I think it was important beyond the content, the fact that government had to and accepted after the judgment that they could not take away some competence, or they have to give some competence to the NRA. So in a psychological way, the consequence of the judgment is more important than the content. The content is also important, but in fact it was also the psychology beyond that. Also, in the meantime, before the budget of our regulator was approved by royal decree, so that means the government, and that changed also. Now it's Parliament who approves our budget after a audition where we explain our policy note, and where there are questions, answers regarding everything, the functioning, the content. So the Parliament sees also the regulator as an expert for their work to control the government. So due to the judgments of the court, European Court, they saw that if we had a complaint or an appeal and we won, that we were not doing anything, and so the respect is beyond the content of the cases. So this helped us. It's also a process of building up the confidence with the different parties, with parliament, with the government, that you're not doing anything that you. But the guarantee is also the accountability, the transparency, as you know. We are controlled by everybody. Let's say everybody can see what we are doing. We are accountable. We are asked by parliament to come to explain not only our decisions, even we don't have to explain our decision. They call us to explain issues to our studies, to let them understand what we are doing, to understand more and better the working of the energy world. But if I may add, on the basis of the experience we lived lived in a recent way, I think the fact to have it's necessary the regulator has competences, maybe sometimes additional competences, but even more important is that you have the additional resources. Because if you receive too much competence and you're not able to execute them in the right way, then the reputation of the regulator will decrease. So the politicians, and now we were working on it last years, and I have at the instance the impression that the politicians are aware that if they give us additional competence, that we need additional resources, financial and human resources, and in practice, that's what we live also. Stakeholders or market players can make the life of a regulator very difficult. For example, if you want to work with a consultant and that consultant worked or is working for the stakeholder, regarding the independency of that consultant, it's very difficult to take them on board because it should be in an independent way. And what we discovered is that if we find a very good consultant, sometimes on the other end of the world, that by miracle, a few months afterward, some stakeholders are working with him to make it impossible for the NRA to continue to work with that consultant. So you have that's the reason why I say you have rules and you have the practice. And in practice, they can make life of a regulator very difficult. And you don't have a rule to say they cannot act in that way, but they are doing it sometimes in that way. They are putting pressure also on people or on the management of an array. So it's very important to have the support of the political world and the respect that an NRA is independent, and we let her do the regulator its work, and we have confidence, they are transparent, they are accountable, and so if there is a need that they can support the regulator in the work they are doing in a neutral and objective way.
Yeah. Going back to my example, Alberto, yeah, one can debate whether it was done through a purpose or not to go to the government, to really show the absurdity that we unfortunately seem to lose every time in court over the WACC rate and so forth. But I think this was Kun also talked about now is very important, and you asked whether any of these cases had an influence over the whole authority and so forth. And I don't know if it stems from this case, but I see a change. At least at my own authority, because before I've been a bit frustrated and said we have to be proactive and go out and tell people what the legislation actually states. I don't know how familiar you are with the Swedish DSOs, but they are 175 plus, and they varies from enormously big company to two-person companies. So you have the whole spectrum. So it means that a lot of them, of course, just follow what the large one tells them. And I discovered the last year that it may not be what's actually in the Swedish Electricity Act that they tell their colleagues. So like we heard this topic this morning by Lukas about anticipatory investment, for instance, that has been in the Swedish Electricity Act in its current form since '87. But for the sector, it's like, no, they told us we can't do that. The minor or less big DSOs. And then you realize that we really have to inform the sector, not only the sector, but also the end consumers, and also push, which is, of course, this gray zone, perhaps, that, but because you realize in this electrification, it's always touched upon this morning session, people are dependent on people, to put it bluntly. So you have this entrepreneur who wants to connect to the grid because he has this great idea to produce something. And at the same time, the entrepreneur thinks this stale network company is, not listening, no answers, very slow acting and so forth. And but still very reluctant to come to us as regulator and complain. I see a shift there also, that maybe we will start to have indicated surveillance, so to say, or cases more and more, because people are so dependent that they don't want to, I think you say in a lot of languages, you don't cut off the arm that feeds you. And here, literally, they are dependent on the network company for the commodity electricity, so they are very reluctant to go against them. At the same time, I mean, we are here as regulated to uphold, fair and competitiveness. So I think we are about to have more indicative actions taken, at least from the Swedish regulator. And I've seen also internally that we are more proactive going out. First step, of course, and in our homepage to having, short videos explaining the legislation on different topics and so forth, and how you can do and what you cannot do, perhaps. Then, of course, the ones really into the topics will complain it's too aggregated, too simplified. But yeah, there is a trade-off there if you want to get the message out, or stuck in details and nobody understands what you say. But I think I see a clear shift there, because I have some colleagues who argued, and we argued, even I did. Now we are neutral. We unless somebody complains and we actually get literally a complaint, we don't do anything. And I think that is long gone. I don't think we can be that passive, if I put it that way.
I think you made, Johan, a very important point, and maybe this is something, we still have a few minutes, so maybe you mentioned, we need to go out, and clearly communication is part of it. And I think you say we don't deal with consumers, and we've heard, I think Nadia beforehand say, until recently we didn't deal with consumers, but even though at the end of the day what regulators are doing is protecting consumers, current and future. I think Ofgem used to have a motto, protecting current and future consumers, something like that, and you protect the interest of the companies only to the extent that they should be still around, in the future to serve future consumers, not because they have, an interest separate from that one. I wonder if we go out and ask people in the streets whether they know about CREG here or the provincial regulator. What if we go in Stockholm and ask about EI or wherever we go? How many knows that they exist exactly? Maybe better not to ask. Should they know? Is this a household business? Should one make an effort to present? Now we have social channel. You can bombard people with things. Is this important? Going forward with a more complex world, with more difficult decisions to be taken, with more interest around. Should they know that there is somebody that protects their interest and therefore that they should protect those who protect their interest? Is this something that, because it seems issues are now becoming a bit more delicate, critical, I don't know how we want to say, but clearly there are, and as I was saying this morning, for the first time, the three pillars, they're all three very, they are priority at the same time, and somebody has to take a decision, partly politicians, partly policymakers, but partly, when it comes to implementation, regulators, because at the end of the day, part of the bill that people gets every month, every 2 months is actually defined by regulators. I don't know. Any views on this?
It's always good that the stakeholders know who the regulator is, and I think the residential customer will know a regulator as far as we are touching upon the bills, price comparison tools, and so on.
But do you think that if I go out here in Merod and stop somebody and saying, who is Craig? Would they say, oh, yes, I know? It's
yeah,
true.
but in Belgium we have a particularity. We are competent
Belgian,
for the transport and transmission and also for the customer protection. But I think that, so this is an important point, and also the ombudsman plays an important role. But I think that that's beyond rules. We have to defend the societal interest, and maybe it's only a word, but the content is, in my view, you cannot expect that a residential customer can defend its own interest as much as good as a big company. A big company, a TSO, a supplier, or a big consumer, a big industrial company. They have the knowledge, they have the competence, they have the resources, and they know how they have to lobby. A residential customer, not. And that's a lack. And I think that a regulator has to take up these tasks. This task regarding, even if you don't have really the competence for the issues which are touching the daily life of a residential customer, but this has to be the aim of a regulator, and not in favor of a residential customer and against the big customer, but in the interest of the customer. But knowing that we are having, and our door is always open to have a discussion, to give information, to have consultations, and so on and so on. But of course, the big companies, the TSOs, will act and react. We never had residential customers who asked for a consultation of the regulator. So we have to be aware we are a public authority, and we have to defend the public interest. And the most customers are residential customers. I don't say that the companies are not important. Of course they are important, but they are sometimes forgotten by us, by the European Commission, by the European Parliament. And I always say it's not an hazard that it's the first time that the protection of the residential customer find a way into the legislative package was in the clean energy package in an article. Before it was in the considerations. And always said there will be no liberalization if the final residential customer does not understand how it works. He will not be active. And we had done studies on the Belgian level. The participation of the residential customer goes in that way that if he switches, most of the time he's switching towards more costly uh, pricing formulas. Most of the people are in the 10% most costly pricing formulas. A minority is the cheapest. Why? We are trying to reach them, and it's so difficult. If you talk about tariffs and price for the big companies, they understand it. They understand it very well. They will do their lobby. They will write us. They will come to us. We will discuss with them. And so this is a role for the regulator, which is very difficult because we did a lot of communication, information campaigns. It's difficult to reach them. On the other hand, I think even if it's inside a regulator, and better is an ombudsman to reach the complaints and to treat those complaints in an effective way. That's also very, very, very important. And also, again, having trust in the ombudsman, having trust in the regulator, that's one of the most important elements, as well for the residential customer, as well for a normal company, as well for the big companies.
I think I could say that's the $10 million question, perhaps. How do you reach out to the residential customers? In Sweden, we struggle through this as long as I've been at the authority. The best we can achieve is to have somebody from the Swedish Housing Association representing them. But I mean, it's completely impossible to get everyone. I think what I see in Sweden is that through the electrification, that we have so many electric vehicles now in the suburbs. At least my network company had to shift the tariff to make sure that if you go out on the grid when the grid is very constrained, then you pay a lot. So incentivize you to shift your load, literally. And that may sound harsh. And fortunately, in my case, they are commune-owned. So they also give you the opportunity to, because they had the pressure from entrepreneurs who went into the sector as retailers of the commodity with the apps. So they also now have to have an app, and they also give the opportunity to steer, when to load your electric vehicle or not. So there you see the benefits of the competition, that these new entrepreneurs who entered into the market of electricity supplier business, they force the incumbent to also improve, and they are forced to it due to the electrification. We have the largest harbor in the Nordic area, which is was taken a decision, I think, 10 years ago, will be electrified. And it remains to be seen if this humongous Maersk container ship will come in. It depends on all these tariffs wars going around. But when it comes in, I mean, I think it's 400 meters long, and if you run that with all the other vessels in the harbor, I don't know, maybe it's like Paris coming to Gothenburg, I don't know. But it's severe. I think one Stena Line ferry going to Denmark is equivalent to 25,000 households. And I think there are 7 of them running back and forth 24/7, plus to Kiel and so forth. But also this container shipments, of course, are much larger vessels. And then you have the electrification of the rest of the society, buses, everything. So I think we have to enlighten people.
Okay, thank you very much, Koen. Thank you very much, Johan. I think we have another coffee break now, I understand, and we should return here in 15 minutes because there is a final session before the closure where Katerina and Claire would have an interaction session on empowering ourselves. So 15 minutes break and then please be back. And thanks a lot to Koen and Jochen. Okay, so we are now getting to the last session, and it's independence of regulators in action, empowering ourselves. It's Katharina Nederman-Tepaine and Claire Hellich Prakin. Prakin. You're not Spanish? No. Okay. Empowering ourselves, independence in action. So, Katharina, you start, I guess.
Yes, I do. Thank you. So let's first see if this works. I think it always takes a minute. Oh, there we go. Very good. So as you can see, and as announced, this is going to be a somewhat interactive session. We have set up a Slido, so get your cell phones out. This is the one moment on the day that you are actually allowed and encouraged to get your cell phones out, scan the code, and join the discussion. We have a single question up there. It's basically an open question for any input that you have on this session, on what we have heard this morning, on what is still to come. You can put your thoughts and considerations in here, either from the room and of course also the viewers from online. And this will enable us to collect a little bit of your feedback, and it will go into our forthcoming paper. The paper has kind of been teased about a little bit today. We have a forthcoming paper at CEER. It's called Independence in Action, Sharing Lessons Across Borders, exactly as today's conference has been called. What we are doing now is it is in, I would say, the last phase. But we will integrate all the results from today's conference into our document. And we hope to be able to finalize and publish it around the end of June. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And in this interactive session, what we'll do is we'll present parts of the document. I believe that all of it will be too much, but we'll present parts of it, and we'll be happy to hear from you your thoughts about this. So let's see. Yes, we will have a 3-part interactive session today. The first part will be about stronger regulators, but we have heard that threats remain. So the role of regulators, it is changing. It is kind of a new field that we find ourselves in. The role is evolving, I would say, but still it is not without threats to our independence. In the second part, we'll present something that we like to call the toolbox for NRAs. And in the end, I don't want to leave you without telling you where we go from here. So there's a little bit of an outlook in here as well. The first part of this session will be taken over by Claire, and I'm very happy to hand over officially also this one and the floor. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Katharina. So, new role for regulators, but threats remain. So, the difficulty of speaking last in such a conference is that not to repeat what has already been said, because much has already been said this morning and beginning of the afternoon. But what comforts me is that the CEER works reflects what we heard so far. So the CEER report highlights the issue at stake as illustrated by the recent decision by the ECJ, and also by real-life experiences. And so as we heard this morning, and we said it in a different way, regulators, we can fulfill our missions when we are independent enough and when we have independence of thought, expressions, and decisions. So we are also very lucky in Europe to have the European Court of Justice, because this is really a pillar guaranteeing our independence. And we see that the decisions made over the past decades on the topic of independence have ruled mainly on 3 topics. First, on functional independence, So how and to what extent shall independent regulator perform their duties and powers? Second topic, the scope of that independence, from whom should the regulator be independent? And the third topic tackled by ECG ruling is the organizational independence. So I won't go through all the rulings and decisions that are listed and explained in the CEER report, but I will just highlight the main outcome of these decisions. Regarding functional independence, in doing so, the ECG insisted on the fact that energy regulators shall have their independence respected throughout the tariff procedure. Yes, because I didn't underline that in the recent decision when talking about regulator duties, the ECG focused on the tariff setting procedures. This is really the key competence of regulators. So what we learn is that energy regulators should have their independence respected throughout the tariff procedure, even in the event of ministry involvement. This is in the Slovakian case. It's a preliminary ruling initiated by a Slovakian court. And the question raised was the following: is the national law which prescribed the participation of people from the ministry in certain tariff setting procedures compatible with the independence of the NRA? And the answer was no. Because here, this is a question of balance, meaning that the representative of the ministries could participate in certain tariff regulation procedures with the aim of guaranteeing the protection of public interest, but they should not use this faculty to put pressure or to give instructions to the regulator. The two other cases, the Swedish one and the Belgian ones have been presented and already discussed, so I won't come back to that cases, but they also insisted on the faculty for the regulators to have full competence on the calculation of network tariff so I think here we made great progresses on that, or clarity at least, regarding the way regulators can enforce that competence. Regarding the scope of independence, the court is telling us in the German case, among other things, that this includes independence from the legislative authority. The legislation cannot be too detailed regarding the criteria and requirements that have to be taken into account when exercising the tariff setting competence. And here it raises a question, maybe to the Commission, because we know this morning Lukasz Kolinski talked about guidance on tariff settings. So I have a question. As we cannot have too detailed guidance from our governments, what if the guiding principles are too detailed but coming from the Commission? I mean, the question of independence from regulators from the Commission is also a question that shall be raised. And so I put the question here, but we know that we have to be able to have a certain level of marge de manœuvre when assessing the tariff of our operators, or access to the grid, to the national grid. So here also this is a question of balance again. Because in the ruling, the court insists on the fact that while the regulator's duty cannot be performed outside democratic control, of course, our work and our decision must go under democratic control, but this control cannot be too prescriptive when it comes to our powers and duties. And and the last one, the last topic that came before the ECG is the one of organizational independence. We talked about it a lot, and Alberto mentioned the case that we detail in our report, the one concerning the Spanish authority and the merger of several sectoral commissions into one, and the effect on the mandate of one of the commissioners, one of the experts, and on energy topics. Here is it's a good example of how legislative change, particularly affecting the internal organization of regulatory authorities, is a threat, or can be a threat to the guarantee of independence of regulators. Just an example, in France, at the beginning, we, at some point in 10 years, we had 4 successive laws changing the organization of the regulators. And so it really had an impact on our work. And there is no denying that we are more efficient when we have operation stability, and that the organization and internal organization is not changing every 2 or 3 years. And looking beyond these cases brought before the court, the CEER has also in its report classified situations that interfere with or challenge the independence of regulators in practice. And it developed some real-life examples, and it also points out an additional challenge that has never been addressed in court, because it's difficult to address it before a court. It's public criticisms from politicians, from companies, from individuals, notably on social media, that can have a reputational impact on the NRA, its credibility, and ultimately it can challenge its legitimacy and independence. And this is an issue we also have to face today. It's not easy to know how to cope with these kind of situations. Some key takeaways before coming to the toolbox. No, okay. So we said that in Europe, regulators have delivered on the initial energy policy goals, and now the world is changing, and we saw that we have parallel goals to reach today: sustainability, affordability, competitivity, security and supply, and so on. And so this is one of the difficulties we have to deal with, and mainly we see that energy prices are becoming increasingly political topics, prompting more pressure from government and legislators on tariffs. And in the energy sector, we have this difficulty reconciling the existence of an independent regulator with the need for the executive and legislative powers to conduct public policy on energy. And this certainly explains the tensions that still exist today on regulators' independence, more than 20 years after the creation of independent regulators in Europe. And regulators need to balance that tension between the independence and the fact that we are not setting policy goals. And this challenge will remain. So we have to see how NRAs can boost our independence, in how we can boost our independence in that context. And so Katharina has some ideas as the answer, and some tools at least.
at least some tools, I hope. The ultimate answer remains out there, I think. Yes, thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. Also, I want to thank all the previous speakers today, because when we look at the agenda and when we think back on the previous sessions, we've heard that very much has already been done to strengthen regulators' independence. We have a very good and solid legal framework. It is being enforced. It is being monitored. We try to keep up. But at the same time, we have heard just in the previous session and notably also during Alberto's thought experiment that the independence is still being challenged. So, there is still the need to do something. Now, what usually happens, I think, in much of the work on independence is that we analyze, we do some kind of a compliance monitoring exercise, we analyze the legal framework, or we analyze the de facto situation, and in the end, what comes out of it very often is calls for the legislative basis to be strengthened. This is the Euro part, because basically the de facto part nobody really knows what to do about. And the toolbox that we have here, this is exactly about the de facto part. It is a toolbox that presents a series of things, of measures that NRAs can take without any need to change the legal basis, measures that any NRA can decide to take themselves. And it is really, I really like to think of it as a toolbox. So you pick and choose the tool that suits your situation, the task at hand, and then you find the instrument that is best for you. What I will present here is just an extract, but I hope that it exemplifies what we have in mind and what will be in the final report. So previously we've seen that everybody tries to find categories to get a grip on this issue of independence. I am one of these, so here are more categories. We have tools that try to improve the definition of what is within and what is without the role of the regulator, what is our mandate and what is not. We have tools that try to strengthen regulation that is driven by expertise, that is fact and evidence-based regulatory decisions. We have a series of tools that improve our transparency. By improving transparency, we create our own accountability to the public usually. And I like to argue that through this accountability, through this transparency, we automatically improve our independence as well. And lastly, we have tools that look at how we handle interferences, including potential interferences or attempted interferences with our independence. So those are the four categories that we have here. And then I come back to this image of the toolbox. We have tools at three different tiers. The first, most basic tier is, I think, rather like a screwdriver, in that almost everybody has one at home. You know how to use it, and it's not a very big financial investment to have one, right? So this is a very easy, let's say, low-hanging fruit. The next tier of tools that we have is a bit maybe like an electric drill, a bit more involved, a bit more of an investment, have to know what you're doing, handling this. And not really everybody has one, but it's still quite common, right? The third tier of tools is, I would say, an angle grinder. Really need to know what you're doing here. Don't destroy all your furniture with it. Also, a bit more financial investments or resources go into this, and it's not as common as a screwdriver is, right? So this is on the left here, and this gives us a nice grid. I will present one tool, one measure from the toolbox for each of these squares, and maybe there is something in there for the NRAs. The paper itself has more measures, but I hope that these will be illustrative. So here, let's start here at the bottom. If we talk about the limitations of our mandate, of our role, what we can do is we can explain, we can take every opportunity to explain to the public what our role is and what it is not. You will also see as I go through these, this relates to a lot of what has been said before. So very many points. For instance, this particular point was raised just in the previous session. So this is something where we say, okay, that there is some worth to this, to doing it maybe also in a structured way. Then what we could have is we could even have a written definition of what our role is and what it is not. And we could publish it on our website, right? So this makes it clear for all the parties involved what is the regulator's role and what can we not do and should we not do. And at the third tier, we could have different branding for different roles. What I mean by this is if you act maybe in several roles, one might be the independent regulator that sets the tariffs, one might be an advisor to the government. We have heard also today from cases where NRAs have different hats, right? So let's not just talk about different hats. Let's say maybe we could have different branding for these different roles, maybe be represented by different people when they present these different results of our work. This would make it easier for the public to distinguish between these roles and also in their minds to clearly ring fence this role of the independent regulator. Let's look at the second category. At an easier level, we can train our staff. This relates to both training in regulatory expertise, but it also relates to training on independence. Training on independence from day one, I think, is something that could and should be done, so that staff know how to act in such situations. Then we could be recording the facts, possibly in a written format, recording the facts, the basis of all our decisions. This would serve the public as well if this comes up, if we are called on to explain. It would also serve future employees of the NRA to be able to go back, to look at the track record, to see why did we do what we did. And at the topmost level here, we have taking a stance. This is also something that we've already heard today. If there is a topic of public discussion related to energy, related to our mandate, we can proactively go out and state our views and state the facts and the evidence that relate to it, so that the discussion is brought to a factual level. Looking at the third column here, we could, and I think we should all have a logical website where people are actually able to find something that they are looking for, which is, should be as common as a screwdriver. Sometimes it is, not.
Not as cheap and not as easy.
It's not as easy, not as cheap. Well, I still argue that this is really something that we should all strive to have. Then at the next tier, we have public consultation. We publicly consult on our decisions and on the main principles. And then we could have a code of conduct. Actually, CEER has some public guidance on how to set up a code of conduct. And one of the guidance principles in there is that at least some parts of a code of conduct should be public itself, even if it is only the fact that you have one, because this already has an effect. It already might preempt some attempts, right? So having a code of conduct and also publicly talking about this is a very good instrument to improve our own independence. And then in the last column here at the bottom, we should be enabling complaints. It should not be difficult for the public or for anybody to complain about and to us. There should be several channels where people can do so, and they should be able to reach us easily and also to complain. Then we could have a whistleblower mailbox where people can either internally or publicly flag if there are any interferences, any attempted interferences with the NRA's independence in an anonymous way. And in the last square up there, what remains is we could have a record of any and all, even attempted interferences with our independence, all possibly difficult situations. And what happens with these records is that we could share them at the appropriate level. That might mean within the regulatory community, it might mean with the European Commission, but it also might mean in selected cases to publish them. So these are some of the tools that we have in our toolbox. They are, as I said, for NRAs to pick and choose, and they are deliberately left somewhat open to interpretation because it is important for NRAs to be able to use them in their own situation. This is the toolbox that we have, and of course, now the question is, what do we do with it?
Yes. What do we do with it? And Katarina, I will try to highlight some key elements where the biggest improvements for NRA's independence could be made. But it's worth stating that there is multiple factors to protect regulators' independence, and not all of them are up to the regulators. So we try to focus on the one that we can handle and we can have an effect on. And we can so develop means to counter threats. We can assert our transparency, our legitimacy, our positive image, to deter the executive or legislative powers from acting against our independence. And as a second resort, as you already said it, we are lucky to be able to rely on a supranational authority for sanctions. And this experience and protection is very specific to the EU. We are very conscious about that. But how to use that tool the best way possible. So, Katarina, maybe let's focus on some key elements and key recommendation.
Yes, so what we have in what is then going to be the last part of our report is basically some lessons learned, if you will, conclusions, not only from this report itself, but from the last, I would say, 10, 20 years of experience in working to improve NRA's independence. So what do we have? What could we do? Also, this is an extract, and not all of the measures from the report are here on the slides. So we have recommendations, and this is previously I said the report focuses on what we can do ourselves, but also there is something in there where we say, okay, maybe the legislator at European, but also the national level can still do something to improve regulators' independence. One thing we've heard about the clear definition of tasks. So we've heard that several of the ECJ cases that were presented today, also several of the practical considerations today, they were about what can the regulator do, what is within our mandate, what are we empowered to do. I should say that if the definition of tasks is as clear as it can be in the legal basis from the start, then we should be getting less and less of these disputes that evolve around the definition of tasks. A second recommendation is, and we've also heard this already today, involve the NRAs when giving us tasks. Of course, I mean, everybody says it, but I think it is true for everyone, right? We are very happy to see that our work is appreciated and that our expertise is appreciated, and that we are given new tasks and new competencies. But not all the tasks are very close to energy regulation. and not all the tasks that we are given can be done with the resources that we have. So the question is always, how can new tasks best be tackled? And also, how much additional resource do we need? Are there maybe efficiencies and overlaps with the tasks we already have? Or is this something completely new that we need to acquire? What is the timeline behind? Can we do this immediately, or would it need some time for us to get set up? So we believe it is a good idea to involve the NRAs when you give us new tasks. But I promised that there would also be things that the NRAs can do and what we commit to doing. So CEER is going to set up a complaint mechanism. We do have a very good complaint mechanism. We can address the European Commission, we can address the courts, but these are also, as we've heard today, involved procedures. They take a while and they might be a little bit cumbersome. So CEER is considering setting up a complaint mechanism where we can exchange among our regulatory community. These are points where I really think we can learn a lot from the ECRB and the MEDREC. They are supporting their members in these situations on a more informal and more direct level, which is also then a very quick way to support members. And another commitment that we make is to develop an independence module that we will integrate in the training academy of CEER. This can then be slotted into, I would say, the basic training, but probably also others, so that NRA staff are trained on this important topic right from the start. So these are 4 of the recommendations and commitments that we have in the report. More is in there, but I think this goes to show that we have very concrete next steps in mind and that we do want to develop this issue further. Now, these are, basic considerations. Maybe, Claire, you can give some more ideas or more background for this.
If you allow me, Alberto. Sure. The quick reactions on those recommendations and commitments. Regarding the recommendation and the clear definition of NRA's tasks, maybe a suggestion for the Commission. Back in 2009, the Commission issued a staff working document on regulators and a part was dedicated to the independence of regulators. Maybe an idea could be to update with the recent case law this staff working document, maybe becoming a guidance, or so we have all in hand all the recent case law regarding independence and maybe dealing with energy regulators, but also other sectoral regulators. We know that we have such kind of guidance in the competition law field where we have such instrument gathering all the case law dedicating to a specific issue. Just an idea. And regarding the involvement of NRAs when assessing new tasks, this is a very good idea. It promotes efficiency. In France, for instance, it's already the case. And we saw the importance of having an adequacy between new tasks and the adequate resources, being human or financial. But here, I want to stress that the experience showed that this does not necessarily lead regulators to require more resources when having new tasks, because sometimes we can also reprioritize resources. So it's really a win-win situation to involve regulators when defining new tasks, because we can also share our experience and think about reprioritizing. Thank you. Our tasks, and so really do not hesitate to involve us when defining new tasks. Regarding the commitments, of course, very good ideas. Better trained staff. I just want to say that it's always a good idea to make newcomers aware of the challenges of independence. This is very specific for regulators, and it requires to strike a good balance to avoid falling into the pitfall of isolation. Independence doesn't mean isolation, and it's not easy on a day-to-day basis to find the right balance. So training staff is key. And regarding complaint mechanism, having a last resort for highly conflictual contexts can always be welcome, of course. So we propose here to have an informal process through CEER. We are sure that it can help to raise concerns at the appropriate EU level. We recently saw that with the Slovenian regulator. We had the help of ACER and CEER contacting the Commission about the issue. And of course, the formal legal procedure will always remain, where regulators will necessarily act individually. And you'll see in the report other and additional recommendations, and we hope that it will be good ideas and it will flesh our reflection on independence of regulators.
Thank you, Claire. This really, I think it kind of brings together everything that we have heard today. But of course, we also want to hear what you have to say. If there is anything that you think of that you want to add to in the next couple of days, please don't hesitate to send us an email. As I said, we will be revising the document and then hope to publish it towards the end of June. And I would also like to see if anybody has found the time to input something into the Slido. Let's see if people were inspired or possibly so gripped by the presentation that nobody has written. Okay, yes, we see a thin border between policy and regulation. Yes, a very difficult balance to strike, or maybe a difficult delineation. I am happy to see that these comments seem to concur with what we have said. Of course, this is always a good confirmation. Even a stronger role in the energy sector for NRAs. I think we would always welcome that. But we have here the balance between the liberty of regulators and the oversight, and of course, because we are using taxpayer money, very important point. I think equally as important as what you mentioned, so that we do not confuse the independence with the isolation. Also, this oversight, of course, needs to be strong. I think, Claire, is there anything on there that you would like to pick up immediately?
Maybe the role, the improvement of the role of regulator. Once it is more under the spotlight. Here we also tackle the issue of how to communicate, how to make consumer understand that we are here to protect the public interest and their interest. I think this is an issue to build and to strengthen our legitimacy, and so it's strongly linked to our independence.
Yes, so all the comments that are in here, all the comments that possibly have come in through the Teams chat, or anything that will be sent to the CR email address, we will look at them. Nothing will be lost. But let me thank already at this point everybody who has participated, all the participants here in the room, all the speakers, the entire audience, and also, of course, those participating online. And not least, our moderator, Alberto. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Caterina. I would have many questions, but I leave it for later on because now we have the closing and we are only 3 minutes behind. So I hope Koen wouldn't mind that we give him the floor for the closing remarks with 3 minutes delayed.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I will not repeat what everybody said today, but I think it's for everybody clear that the independency for the regulator is a main issue if you want to fulfill our role in general. During time, the role of the regulator became more and more important. We saw it, it was explained also. And as an example, I think we can say that inside the CEER, the independency issue is since the beginning one of the main issues for the regulators. The proof is the deliverables we produced and the trainings we are organizing. And I think more than ever, it's important to continue in that way. Sharing the experiences, knowledge sharing, training our people, explaining, making reflections, and so on. As mentioned, in the whole process of the liberalization of the energy market, the NRA is a cornerstone because the market players, stakeholders, must see an authority, a body wherein they can have trust, not an administration who is only executing what the government is doing. I'm not saying that what the governments are doing is bad, but they are politicians and they have also some political objects, and we as a regulator are trying to do it in an independent, objective way. We have to implement, and it was mentioned also, the question, should we be independent of the European Commission? That's another question. We can have a very, very, very long debate about that. I personally, I think that democracy is the basis of our society. The highest institution is Parliament, as well on national as on European level. So maybe some balance should be seeking in that way. To be independent, building up the expertise is very important. Without expertise, we will not have respect. There will be no trust from the market players, no trust from Parliament, no trust from government. So we have to continue our efforts to build up our expertise. I think I can only repeat that inside CEER with our training center, and I think Alberto can say it also with the Florence School. That's the purpose we are searching to do so. But notwithstanding the fact that we should be independent, we may not live in an ivory tower. We must feel what's happening in real life, because we are responsible in a societal way, let's say. We cannot live in an ivory tower. We have to implement. We have also to see what the consequence of the implementation is. We are not living in an ivory tower. We are accountable. We are responsible. There's transparency. We cannot refuse any debate. We should enter into debate. We should also try to explain things, to listen, and eventually, even if we implement, sometimes we have choices, and choices have to be made in the interest of society. Regarding the competences, it was mentioned by different speakers, and I'm not completely, I do not completely agree with Claire. The experience learned me that if we receive additional competences, we need And we must have additional resources. Of course, we are responsible, we are working with public money. But if they give us additional competence without additional resources, it might endanger our independency. Because we have to do our work, and if we in extreme situation we can't have any discussion anymore, or we don't have the time anymore to have exchanges with our colleagues of other NRAs, we can not learn from each other. And sometimes it's dangerous because we can be a victim of our own success, let's say. We build up the expertise, we build up the trust during the last 25 years. And it's a very good thing. We did it on our own, we did it together with other NRAs, we did it now the last, let's say, 14 years together with CEER. So it's very good, we are respected. But we have to merit our respect, we have to continue our job. It's not the only thing, it's not sufficient. We need also support if we are put in danger from the European Commission. We saw it in the past, and I can give the example of the Spanish regulator, where on an organizational way, the organization was, let's say, exaggerating a little bit, destructed. At that time, that's my vision, there was not enough engagement from the European Commission towards our colleagues from Spain. On other points, the European Commission did its job due to the infringement procedures, which can help very good the national regulators. We have the rules. It has to be implemented by the European Commission, European Court, national courts, and by us. But it's a soft law, let's say, which is dangerous. Now we are on a level that the rules are in place in national law. I think in most countries there is a respect towards the NRAs. We are recognized by the parliament, not always, but in most cases. The danger is the things as influence, pressure. You cannot cap it into rules. And that's, so people who are working inside the NRAs, the management, we must have values. The value of a regulator. I think after 25 years we can say there is a value of a regulator. We have to incorporate the value of a regulator. It's very important. It's difficult to control. But we have to pay attention about the influence, the pressure, because we are working in a market where companies, stakeholders are big companies. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of money, much more than we have, much more. And so we have to pay attention that they cannot impeach or make it impossible for the regulator to do its job in the right way. We have to take up our responsibility due to introducing a case into court. We have to do, it's our responsibility towards the market. Stakeholders are expecting that we are doing our job in the right way. Therefore, once again, transparency is very important. We are accountable, that's the logic, that's a little bit check and balances. We have competences, but we are accountable, and the societal responsibility. Therefore, the aspect which we have to work maybe in the future is to work on our communication with press, because we have a lot of knowledge, information, data. Journalists are searching for those information in an objective way. They know that we don't have commercial interest. And if we can create a good link with the press, not abuse them, of course, but giving information, it can help us also to reach the residential customers. But once again, more important than rules for me are values, ethics, integrity, and therefore also the stability. The stability not of the framework. Of course, it's important for an investment, but that's not in our hands. But stability of our organization. It's easy to destruct a regulator. If there is no stability inside the regulator because they are changing the organization the whole time, the regulator cannot work. They will not have trust in a regulator. So I think we still have work to do in the upcoming years, And even if you don't have work, it's important to continue to have such kind of workshops, to continue to have exchange of information, experiences, also with the people from MEDREC and others. They can learn from us, but we don't have to be pretentious to say we know everything. Sharing experiences, we can still learn from everybody. And we have to reflect towards the future role of the NRAs. 2 months ago, we were celebrating the 25 years of CREG, and I looked into the room. And even if 50% of people who are working at CREG are male and female, so I saw in the room maybe 10% of women. I think there is still work to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the closing remark. So the closing remark comes at the end. And so thanks a lot. I found it very interesting debate. Thank you for inviting me to moderate it. And I hope that we all learn a lot. Not the end of the story, perhaps just another episode. So safe journey back.